Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why your brain feels fine one day and foggy? The next, this new study dives deep into that exact question. Scientists often think of our brain power as being pretty steady, like a single score. But we know that is not quite right? Our minds can definitely have good days and bad days, or even good hours and bad hours. Instead of just measuring how smart we are once, what if we could look at how our thinking changes throughout the day, or even over weeks? That is the big idea behind something called high-frequency cognitive assessment, or HFCA. Think about it like this. If you only check the weather once a year, you might miss a lot of the important climate patterns. HFCA is like checking the weather multiple times a day for several weeks to get a much clearer picture of how things are really going. The problem is, most of the tests we use to measure thinking are designed for one-time checks and don't really capture these daily ups and downs very well. So, a team of researchers developed a new set of tools to do just that. They called it the Cognitive Variability Battery, or CVB. This battery wasn't just one test. It was a collection of 9 different brain games, all designed to be taken on a computer or smartphone, multiple times a day for several weeks. They grouped these tests into 3 main brain skill areas: attentional control, which is like your brain's ability to focus and ignore distractions; processing speed, how fast your brain can actually work through information; and episodic memory, your ability to remember past events and experiences. They recruited people from all over the United States, people of different ages and backgrounds, to take these tests. Participants would get text messages 3 times a day, prompting them to do a short set of these brain games. Each test was given many times to each person, up to 60 times for each individual test. This allowed the researchers to see not just how well people performed on average, but also how much their performance varied from one test session to the next. They also asked people about their mood, stress levels, and social interactions at the same time they took the cognitive test. Now, what did they find? First, they looked at how steady or variable each test was. Think of reliability like this. If you take the same test multiple times, how consistent is your score? They found that some tests were better than others at being reliable tests. In the attentional control domain, for example, were pretty good. They could even tell if averaging scores over a few sessions made the results much more reliable, closer to the level of some standard lab tests. This is really important because it tells us which tests are good for measuring consistent abilities and which ones might be better for tracking changes or variability. For example, the attention tests showed strong reliability both between different people and within the same person over time. This means they're good at showing differences between individuals and changes within an individual. But here is where it gets really interesting. They wanted to see if these daily cognitive ups and downs were actually linked to things happening in people's lives. They looked at stress, negative feelings, and social interactions. And guess what? They found connections. For instance, when people reported feeling more stressed or having more negative emotions, their performance on some of the cognitive tests tended to dip. This was true for both their average performance and their day-to-day fluctuations. The attention tasks were particularly sensitive to these daily life factors. On days when people were more stressed or feeling down, their ability to focus and control their attention seemed to suffer. They even looked at the variability itself. They measured cognitive variability as how much a person's performance bounced around from one session to the next. They found that this variability in processing speed, how fast your brain works, was consistently linked to stress, negative feelings, and social interactions. This suggests that when our lives get tougher, it is not just our average performance that suffers, but our brain's ability to stay consistent might also be affected. This is a huge deal because it means that cognitive ups and downs aren't just random noise. They can be real indicators of how our mental state is being affected by our daily experiences. For researchers trying to understand conditions like Alzheimer's disease or depression, this is gold. It means they can potentially use these daily changes as early warning signs, or to see if an intervention is working not just on average, but in how it stabilizes a person's cognition. The study also provided some really practical advice for future research. They did these complicated power analyses, which are basically like figuring out how many people and how many tests you need to get a reliable answer. They found that to reliably detect differences between people based on their average performance, you might need around 100 to 200 people with at least 10 assessments each, depending on the test. But to actually track those subtle day-to-day changes within a person, that is much harder and requires a lot more data, maybe even 300 people or 100 assessments per person. This highlights the challenge of studying within Person variability. So, what does this all mean for us? Well, it confirms what we intuitively feel. Our cognitive function isn't fixed, it is dynamic and influenced by our daily lives. The fact that attention tasks seem to be particularly sensitive to stress and mood suggests that keeping our minds focused might be especially vulnerable to these daily fluctuations. This research is really paving the way for smarter ways to study the brain. Instead of just a snapshot, we can now get a whole movie. This could help us understand mental health conditions better, track the effects of aging, and even see how lifestyle changes impact our thinking over time. Of course, like any study, this one has its limits. They point out that their sample might not include people who truly can't access or use smartphones, and that they allowed a window of time for participants to complete tests, which might affect how well they capture truly momentary states. But overall, this is a groundbreaking step. By developing and validating these tools, the researchers have given us a much clearer lens to view the everyday reality of our cognitive lives. They've shown us that the fluctuations in our thinking are meaningful and can be measured, which opens up a whole new world of possibilities for understanding ourselves and what impacts our minds. I am really excited to see how this research is used in the future to help people better understand and maintain their cognitive health. What do you all think about this? Does it surprise you that your stress levels can impact your brain's consistency? Let me know in the comments below, and if you found this breakdown helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more science insights. And hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next dive into the science of the mind. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.